and hazardous substances down at Stelco. There's asbestos, coke oven emissions, benzene. Many of them, when they are in their older years, experiencing occupational diseases and cancers. And we see this at an alarming rate. Our actuarials have seen this. It's unbelievable. And many of them depend on medicines to fight off these diseases. So as we said, it's despicable. And I'd just like to add, because there's a lot of things to talk about, but as many in this room know, that a lot of people retired early. They actually wanted to work later, but when U.S. Steel, a year after they took over, broke their promises on the Investment Canada Act and laid off people, a lot of people retired early, long before they ever thought they would. So for them, in their 50s, having no other choice, they're not even qualified for the Ontario drug plan. It's going to cause a huge burden in this community if people don't have drug coverage and other benefits that they deserve. And the point is, they've worked long and hard to get these. A lot of these things they just don't come to you. They were deferred wages. And we've talked about that, and a lot of people have made that point. It's deferred wages. We took less money to get these benefits. And the company well knows how important these benefits are to our retirees. And this is nothing more than a precondition to the forced mediation that we have to be in next week. So now we have to go in, we're supposed to go into mediation next week with U.S. Steel with this hanging over our heads. It's just wrong. People are outraged, but they're not surprised with U.S. Steel. So I'm going to turn it over now to Rob Newstead from the Pickling Division.
Good afternoon. I'm Rob Newstead, the unit chair of the Pickling Division for Local 8782 in Nanticoke. Currently, right now, with the 15,000 tons that they're moving is hitting at the heart of all three operations. The 15,000 tons is going to hurt us all large. In the Nanticoke Division, I've already got layoffs. I've lost 10 people already. Thank you.
I'm Bill Ferguson. I'm the president of Nanticoke, Local 8782. If you all go back and remember back in October, U.S. Steel had us in court. They had the DIP financing that they arranged and told us that the plant would close unless we signed the DIP financing agreement within 24 hours. It's a tribute to the people who work in those mills that they have not required the DIP financing or to get into the DIP financing at all until now. Anybody who says to us that these mills can't produce are lying to you. The reality is that U.S. Steel has now pulled one of the legs from underneath the table. They've decided to start shipping tonnage to the United States. They couldn't ruin the mills. They couldn't drive them into ruin. They had to do it by reaching in and taking that tonnage out. The first principle of restructuring is to maintain the value in any given operation, and that people can find a way to restructure, to bring more cash into the operation and stabilize it. U.S. Steel has violated the first principle of restructuring and the first principle of CCAA. At this point now, what they've done is they've decided to reach in to the most vulnerable in the community and make a threat. Now, folks, it's a threat at this point. What they're saying to us is they intend to go to court and have the court take away the OPEBs, that is the post-retirement benefits, from the most needy in the community. This, a threat, a precondition going into negotiation. It's not fact. It's not happening tomorrow. It's going in front of the court. However, that is their response to our protest over 15,000 tons being pulled out and taken to an American mill. I don't think anybody here would be surprised to find out that they're transferring tonnage out of Canada. I don't think anybody's surprised that they're acting completely in self-interest without any regard for the community. During this process, I have yet to hear from our Conservative government They've disappeared completely off the map. These were the people who signed the Investment Canada Act. These are the net benefit to Canada people who said that this was going to work for us, that this was going to bring livelihood, benefit to Canada. It's brought nothing but pain and suffering to anybody who has touched this. Now, as far as U.S. Steel's moves, we're not surprised. What we have found with U.S. Steel is they often surface bargain. They wait to the last minute and then they lay down threats. It's nice to know that their modus operandi has not changed. In my view, it just makes it more difficult. We have seen them dropping leaflets into our plants to our members to try and intimidate our members. They've been trying to intimidate retirees. It's not going to work. U.S. Steel has got to come up to the standards that's expected of them in a civilized democracy. It's going to be painful for them. I'm afraid they're going to have to try. We are not going to abandon anybody. Our pensioners and our OPEBs are sacred to us. They're sacred to the union movement. And to this date, and I'll echo what Tony said, I've yet to look across the table and look into their eyes. We had a meeting set up for them in Toronto that they were supposed to attend, and they've refused to attend to speak to the people who have the pen that can make the changes. They've decided to ignore us and create terror in the community. They've decided to use instability in Hamilton, in Nanticoke, in Haldimand, Norfolk. They want to terrorize the people and try to force a conclusion. Any of us in here find this behavior completely and totally unacceptable. We're going to be preparing to go in, and we're not going to be deterred from doing what's right. We are going to take care of the vulnerable in our community, and I would ask everybody in our community, our politicians, our mayors, everybody who lives in this community to band together to defend the most vulnerable and have your voices heard. I welcome any questions from anybody on the floor, and I think as a committee we welcome questions from anybody on the floor, but this is how we have to proceed. We have no choice.
We do believe that everything U.S. Steel is attempting to do is illegal. We are going to court. One thing I'm sure everybody in this community knows, all our friends know, we are a fighting union, and we're going to fight this right to the end, because we've made a commitment that they're not going to take the OPEBs and they're not going to hurt our retirees. Any questions? Yeah.
Can we assume, since the Progressive Conservative government will not release with the signed document they did with U.S. Steel, is it true that we can only assume that's the worst agreement in the world and they would be embarrassed to all Canadians that they agreed to such an agreement?
I couldn't agree more. Even through this process, Scott, we've attempted through our legal lawyers and our legal department and with the provincial government, we've tried to get and find out what that deal was, and both the government and the company have refused. They're not going to release it to us. So I would tend to agree with what your assumption is.
If I could answer that too, Scott. If it was a good deal, and we're in the midst of a federal election right now, if it was a good deal, they'd be flying that from a flagpole somewhere. They're not. They're keeping it low, and they're keeping it off the agenda.
Right.
Tony, guys, it would be fair to say that the Bankruptcy Insolvency Act of Canada and the CCAA processes are antiquated and destructive, and they certainly don't benefit the workers of our country. Would that be a fair statement?
But from what we've seen and what we've experienced so far, I agree. Yeah.
And would you put any blame on the judicial system and the way they've handled some of this, and the lawyers and the people involved?
I can't speak for the lawyers, Paul. I know that our lawyers are doing whatever we ask of them. You know, every time we're in a CCAA, like I was in two with Slater Steel and Hamilton Specialty Bar, twice, and we pulled them out, and they're surviving now. They're operating in the black. But then again, you have somebody who wants to sit down and talk to you. Under this scenario, no one wants to talk to us. And they know we have a veto, and we're gonna use that veto whenever we can.
Some of the judicial decisions that have come out of those courts, have they been questionable at best?
I would say.
Gary? Yeah, and the other thing, and the one other thing I wanted to add was, you know, there's been a lot of talk for quite some time, and talk directed to the government, that people have to decide whether they want a steel industry in Canada. And if you look at most industrialized countries, right, they all have steel industries. So we're seeing in Hamilton a U.S. steel just destroy our Canadian steel industry. And we have to, I think there's a lot of people, and we've seen a lot of people that really want to stand up and fight for the steel industry in Canada. And we've seen it in our communities that people expect that from the court system to stand up for their rights, because they're getting sick and tired, as I said initially, of U.S. Steel intimidating, threatening. When they don't get their own way, they say they're going to take their ball and go home. Well, people are tired of that, right? And now, I think they've crossed the line where this is the last straw, where they've said, now, if they don't get their own way next week, then they're going to end the OPEBs and the pensions and contributions. People have had enough. They're sick and tired of it. And they expect to see the federal government to get up and do something on their behalf.
Well, listening into United Steelworkers organization, the union there, they are reacting to news that US Steel Canada is seeking a court order to continue restructuring after the company said it was unable to negotiate a sale of its operations in Hamilton and Nanticoke. Now, basically, the union says that this will result in taking away post-retirement benefits, that's health, medical, dental, and life insurance, while negotiations are on the deck for next week. They're worried about benefits for seniors and pensioners. They called it a despicable low for U.S. Steel to whittle the company into oblivion. Although union members have promised that we're not going to abandon anyone, we are going to fight this right to the end. We're going to take a break. We're back with more news after this.
Government be able to step in and defend the interest of Canadians against foreign corporations that are lobbyists.